CBS 2 and WLNY. This is breaking news.
Good afternoon. I'm Dana Tyler in the CBS 2 WLNY newsroom, and we're interrupting our programming. Breaking news: New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and Police Commissioner Bill Bratton addressing the police tragedy in Dallas and what's being done here in the city.
And I want to emphasize that an attack on our police is an attack on all of us. It is an attack on our larger society and everything we hold dear. We know that there are some who not only do violence but attempt to divide us further. We will not let that happen. Even with the pain that we all feel right now, we will redouble our efforts to bring police and community together, to keep our officers safe, to keep our communities safe. On behalf of 8.5 million New Yorkers, I want to extend my condolences to all the families in Dallas who lost their loved ones. And it's so important to recognize these officers were there protecting the protesters' rights to act on their views. They were protecting their First Amendment rights. These officers were there for the people around them, and they protected the protesters even as bullets were hailing down. The officers in Dallas went to the defense and the protection of the protesters. That's something we have to reflect on as an example of all that is good about our police and the work they do, but also a reminder of the way forward. Because even in that most difficult and painful and tragic moment, the police defended everyone around them. The officers in Dallas were assassinated in cold blood, and we know that their families are in tremendous pain right now. But it's important to recognize that police officers and their families all over the country and in this city are feeling a very real pain as well. Imagine what family members are thinking, having woken up this morning to see these images. Imagine what fear they feel for the men and women they love who serve us. So I want all New Yorkers to be aware of that pain. And please, today, wherever you go, you see a police officer, take a moment to console them, to offer condolences, to thank them, because they're feeling a lot right now. They're doing their jobs, but they're feeling a lot right now, and their families are feeling a lot of fear. In terms of this city, thank God, there is no evidence of a specific threat directed here. I just met with Commissioner Bratton and his leadership team, and they are being exceedingly vigilant about any and all information available to us about upcoming protests and other activities, but I emphasize there is no credible threat directed at New York City or emanating from New York City at this moment. We are taking a number of important precautions. No officers will be patrolling solo. Everyone will be paired up for their safety. There will be very substantial police presence at all protests. We're going to make sure there are plenty of officers to keep everyone safe, and so that our officers have plenty of backup and support. And we will continue to be vigilant for any information that may cause us to take any strategic changes or actions. I'll conclude and then turn to Commissioner Bratton just after a few words of Spanish, but I'll conclude by saying this kind of moment, it's very easy for people to lose hope. It's so painful to watch public servants gunned down while doing their job, while serving others. Again, I remind you, people of Dallas over years have done so much to bring police and community together. The protest was notable. The peaceful protest before this heinous act was notable for the good relationship between police and protesters that was in evidence up until this moment of tragedy. And again, the fact that the officers, their first impulse was to protect the protesters. That should be, even in the midst of the pain and the tragedy, that should be a ray of hope. That should be a reminder that we have to move forward, police and community together, and that we will. Just a few words in Spanish. A nombre de todos los neoyorquinos, quiero enviar nuestro más sentido pésame a la ciudad de Dallas y las familias de los fallecidos anoche. Hasta ahora no hay señales de una amenaza aquí en Nueva York, pero estamos tomando medidas de precaución. No vamos a permitir que nada socave nuestra fe en la democracia y en que el progreso pueda superar el odio y la desunión. With that, I'd like to turn to Commissioner Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all for being here. Public safety is the foundation of our democracy and its freedoms. It's the first guarantee of our Constitution. Officers, brave officers of the Dallas Police Department and the Dallas Area Rapid Transit Police Department, DART, last night were targeted and murdered as they protected people exercising those freedoms. This does not blunt the pain of loss, but there is certainly honor and heroism in it. The hundreds of thousands of officers across the country who will be out today, keeping people safe, working with communities, serving others, know this. It's why we wear the uniform. It's how we move forward. It's what we do. Last night, as like many of you, I was watching the events unfold in Dallas, even as I was monitoring the events here in New York City and many other cities around the country. I was certainly reminded of the tragedy that afflicted this city in 2014, late 2014, 2015, eerily similar. 2 of our police officers murdered during the height of demonstrations around issues of racial injustice. This is a continuing crisis in this country that needs to be addressed. And if, as the experiences we had in New York with Lou and Ramos, where we sought to ensure that their lives were not lost in vain, but that we could move forward and use those deaths, those tragic murders, to try and heal, to try and address the issues in this city, in this country, then similarly in this matter, the murder of 5 police officers and the injuring of many others, that we need to have it serve as a catalyst at this very critical time in our country's history, our nation's history, to try to continue that healing process. Quite obviously, the events of this last week, the concerns about the lives of several black men at the hands of police officers that led to the demonstrations that were underway last night, the murder now of these Dallas police officers. It needs to be a clarion call for all of us in this country to take seriously the grievances that many in the minority communities of this country have, as well as the concerns that police have about not feeling that they're understood in terms of all that they face and all that they try to do. We need to try to find common ground as we go forward. In the NYPD, our hearts go out certainly to our brethren in Dallas. I anticipate that as the arrangements go forward next week, that you will see an incredible outpouring of American law enforcement and the communities we serve to that city, to those 2 police departments, as they try to deal with the grief that they experienced last evening. In terms of what we're doing here in New York, in an abundance of caution, very similar to the experiences we had back in 2014 and 15, Chief O'Neill has issued orders that for the time being, all of our officers will be doubled up. Most of our patrols usually are dual, but we'll ensure to the best of our ability that we try to double up all of our assignments. Additionally, our auxiliary police officers who are unarmed, with the exception of the nightsticks they carry, also will not be utilized in the field for the next several days as we get a full understanding of the circumstances in Dallas. Additionally, that We will continue to work with the Dallas Police Department, the FBI, to gather intelligence from the events and see if there's any linkage at all in any way, shape, or form here to New York in the form of potential threats here. As the mayor has already referenced in the briefing we just had upstairs, there are no specific threats directed against officers of this department at this time that we deem credible. There have been about 50 over the past week. Chief Gallardi will go into more detail about what the department is looking at relative to our intelligence gathering and our response. Every threat made against a New York City police officer is investigated fully and thoroughly. And even if we deem them not credible at the initiation, we treat them as if they are. So all the 50 of those threats will be fully investigated so we are satisfied that they are not legitimate and not credible. Chief O'Neill will brief you on some of the arrangements that we will be making for demonstrations, one of which, a small one, is occurring directly in front of the building, several others planned for this evening, and then others over the weekend, how we intend to police them to protect not only the rights of the demonstrators if they behave appropriately, civilly, within their constitutional rights, but also to protect the interests of the other 8.5 million New Yorkers in this city. So we are fully prepared to do what we do, which is to try to protect the interests of all in this city. A tragic time that's just so hard to comprehend. Last night, watching it unfold, that again, as I was monitoring our own events in the city, what happened there could have happened in any city in America last night. That's the reality of it. That's the sadness of it. The idea that in the 21st century that something like that could in fact happen. 45 years in the business, never seen anything quite like it in terms of a directed attack against police officers, very specifically because they were wearing a blue uniform. It's something that we cannot tolerate. We cannot tolerate racial injustice, but we can also not tolerate injustice directed against our police forces. Thank you. Chief Gallardi.
Good afternoon. As the mayor and the police commissioner said, we are tracking numerous threats right now, but right now we don't consider any of those threats credible. What we do have is, starting on Wednesday after the Baton Rouge incident, we started receiving threats. That's not uncommon after an incident like that. That would get an increase of threats to New York City police officers specifically. We started tracking them, and as the events folded through the week, just in the meeting we had about an hour ago, we had 15. We actually received 2 more, so we are tracking right now a total of 17 threats. Some of them, we've already identified the people involved. We spoke to them, and we deemed them not to be a threat to us. Some of them, we are looking for the individuals that have posted the threats. The threats come in many different ways. They're posted on Twitter or Facebook. Some of them are called in. Some come in through the Safe City hotline, and some come in through the Crime Stoppers. We encourage anybody that overhears or hear of anybody that wants to harm police officers to please contact us in those manners.
Chief O'Neill will update you on the events of last evening as well as what's planned for the upcoming weekend. Chief O'Neill.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. So just to start off, I just want to talk a little bit about what we're doing for the men and women of the NYPD. I did issue a couple of messages last night, as did Carlos Gomez, to double up patrol, make sure nobody's out there by themselves, and also to make sure we have station house security in front of all the precincts, districts, and PSAs. And it's in my role as chief of department, I have to keep all the people of this great city safe, but I also have to make sure that we keep our cops safe. You know, each and every one of the 36,000 men and women of this police department. So what transpired in Dallas last night, and I'm sure it had a profound effect on all of them. So we have to make sure that not just the leadership of the NYPD, but the great people of the city have to make sure that they understand the sacrifices made by all the men and women in this great police department every day. So I just want to make sure that message is out there. If you see what's transpired over the last couple of years, not only the last 25 years, the last couple of years, how we've changed this police department with the neighborhood policing program, we've come a long way, and I don't want to lose that ground. It's important that we continue forward, and we continue to have that connectivity to the communities that we're sworn to protect and serve, and that this is meaningful stuff. We've made a lot of progress, and I don't want to see us fall back. I've been in this business a long time, not as long as the commissioner, and what I saw last night is truly heartbreaking. So last night we had a demonstration up at Union Square. It started up at Union Square Park, started around 5 o'clock. They stepped off, they marched, started around 5:40 in the afternoon. They went up, I think they went westbound on 14th, went up to 5th Avenue, broke off into a couple of different groups. We had the appropriate number of resources. They did at one point try to get on the West Side Highway. We blocked them there, and they doubled back, reconstituted on 42nd Street, went to 4, 2, and 7, where we had a number of people. I think at peak, the number we're giving out is probably 1,200 protesters. We asked people to clear the street at 4, 2, and 7. Most people complied. We did end up arresting 37 people at 4, 2, and 7 last night, and that was for blocking vehicular traffic. They cleared the street and continued separate marches. At one point, we had another 3 groups out there. We had another series of arrests at 57th Street and 5th Avenue. That was about 4 arrests, and then at 7, 6, and 5, we had an additional arrest. The last group dispersed around 2 o'clock in the morning, and that was up north of 110th Street. So there are a number of events planned today. I think there's an additional event planned at Union Square Park. And we'll make sure we have the appropriate resources to deal with it as we did last night. And going through the weekend, we have additional staff on hand to make sure that people do have the opportunity to protest, but there's a point that comes when we respect the rights of the protesters, but they also have to respect the rights of the other people in this great city. So we do have a number of events through the weekend, but again, we are appropriately staffed. So thank you very much.
We can open up to some on-topic questions, please. Commissioner, is there anything you're doing differently as a result of what happened in Dallas last night that you can tell us about? And you mentioned 50 threats. Are those the threats that you went through specifically to police officers?
That's correct. We unfortunately had our own experience that was remarkably similar, except for the incredible loss of life in this event. So we learned a lot, both in terms of dealing with the demonstrations, gathering of intelligence beforehand, during the events, after. And one of the things that we always take seriously at any time are threats against our officers. And so each one of these is not treated callously. They are investigated very thoroughly. And that's why we're in a position to say at this particular point in time, we don't deem that any of them are credible, but at the same time, abundance of caution, and we do have the resources to very quickly ramp up security at our station houses, doubling up officers on patrol. We also, in terms of being able to deal with the demonstrations that we learned a lot from 2 years ago, we now have the Strategic Response Group, who are all specially trained to deal with that particular issue, crowd management, crowd control, backed up by the Critical Response Command. So we have effectively over 1,100 officers that we did not have a couple of years ago to help police those events.
On that issue, it turns out that this suspect, it is believed that he was a member of the U.S. Army. So now you have officers that have long guns that might have been able to do something that the officers in Dallas didn't appear many of them had long guns. So he was a member of the U.S. Army. We don't know how much or what his experience there was. Does that change your thinking in terms
Well, I think one of the things that we should note relative to last night's event, I referenced it could happen in any American city, town, or village at any time. We're a country awash in weapons, 300 million of them. I forget the last count of how many these AR-15 type long guns are out there, the tens of millions. We have consciously increased the number of long guns and officers trained to use them, so that at any given time in the city, at any hour of the day, we have very significant numbers of personnel that have those weapons available, as well as the heavier tactical gear. I think we'll probably find last night that some of those officers were killed, even though they were wearing vests, that the military-style weapon and some of the ammunition that those weapons use will penetrate vests. And to that end, the new vests that we're issuing our officers have a customized plate that will hopefully defend against that type of round if they encounter it. But the benefit we have in this city is we don't have a call-up SWAT team. At any given time, emergency service, probably the most highly trained police in America, are out in the field in significant numbers, and they're now backed up by CRC and SRG, all of whom have long guns in their vehicles also. So it's part of the ramping up that the mayor supported with the 1,300 additional cops, plus all the money to buy all those vehicles, the long guns, and to constantly train with them.
Just this morning, there was a FDNY EMC being shot in the arm with a BB gun up in the Bronx. They're fine, luckily, but any reason to believe that they were targeting people?
I don't have any specifics on that. We can get information for you on that one.
In terms of the protests and the events coming up this weekend, you said that you have sufficient numbers of people to deal with that. Is that different than how you were dealing with the protests last night? Do you have a different response plan or anything that would be happening today or this weekend?
I'll ask Chief O'Neill to speak to that, again, we will ensure that everybody, their constitutional rights are protected, but if they engage in significant acts that go outside those constitutional protections, we will, as we did last night in 40 instances, make arrests where appropriate. Jimmy?
I don't have a lot to add to that, but just to echo what the commissioner said, that we're here to facilitate that. People have a right to protest. A lot of emotions in the country right now, but again, there comes a point when that starts to interfere with the rights of other New Yorkers. We need to step forward and make summary arrest.
I mean, asking if you have more people, are you planning on putting more people on the street, different way, different strategies or tactics for actually working with the protests?
Our tactics change with what we see, so I'm not going to go into great detail what our tactics are, but there will be the appropriate number of people out there.
Let me just add to that. Very, very clear protocol that we have with the protests. The police will instruct the protesters as to what's appropriate to do, where's appropriate to be, and they'll make very, very clear to the protesters what those limits are. We do not want to see anything that would create a harm to anyone. We do not want to see traffic delayed more than it has to be. So there's going to be clear lines. And the protesters need to be very clear about the fact that once the police warn them that they are subject to arrest, that's a very, very serious statement, and that anyone who does not abide by the instructions of the police will be arrested. But I also want to urge all the protesters to really recognize the pain that our police are going through right now, and to be very respectful. The police are there to protect their First Amendment rights. Protesters owe it to the police to be respectful. You can speak up for whatever cause you believe in, but at a time like this in particular, such a difficult and painful time for our police and their families, show some decency and respect for people who are going through so much.
I'm sorry, what was that?
What can you say about the request to meet with police officers and possibly hold a test conference to show support by Donald Trump?
Our interest is staying out of the politics of the moment, that not to provide photo ops, that Mr. Trump wants to speak to me. I'll be happy to brief him on what we're doing. Senator Clinton wants to speak to me. I'll be very happy to brief her on what we're doing. But we're not in the business of providing photo ops for candidates. Okay. That my understanding is there may have been a request made to attend a roll call. I believe that was something. I've also had basically an inquiry from Senator Clinton about setting up a call to be briefed on what's going on here in New York. And again, I'm more than happy to speak to either one of them in that regard. We'll also will be in conversation, I think you're aware, with Secretary Johnson later in the day, who's in the area, and we'll be hoping to do probably some type of availability with him later in the day if our respective schedules can be brought together.
What's your message to average New Yorkers who may want to come out to protest because they're concerned about this issue, but they're here, the snipers in Dallas have long guns. You guys have long guns. I've already heard a parent tell a kid, hey, don't worry about being pro-black today. I'm nervous. Don't go. What's your message?
That remains an individual choice. What we in the NYPD will do, as the mayor has echoed, is that we will protect the rights of everybody to operate within the law. It's a shared responsibility. If you want to come out and demonstrate, well, come out and demonstrate legally and appropriately. and not make it more difficult for the police, as well as those that are seeking to have their voices heard, by having those voices distracted from by unnecessary violence or disruption or illegalities. So we are perfectly capable of working, as we have for many years, to allow people to demonstrate. No city in America has more experience in this area than us. But at the same time, that if they get out of hand, we'll deal with that appropriately. But if people want to come out, they should feel free that we'll do our best to protect their right to demonstrate, their right to demonstrate within the law.
For the mayor, you stressed the need for improved training and making research. Does what happened recently make you reconsider your support or your opposition for the Right to Know Act, that could formalize certain interactions between police and people they stop on the street?
No, same position.
Why?
Just because I think it's, for all the reasons we've seen over the years, I think we have to strike a balance in terms of improving police-community relations while keeping this city safe. And I just have the same view I have had for the last few years on that matter.
Commissioner, as a police officer, I wonder, what do you feel you mean what's seeing what's happening in Dallas? And I wonder what you think your police officers are feeling today after 5 fellow officers were gunned down in Central.
Well, I think there's a combination of feelings, certainly grief, sadness, solidarity, that these events tend to bring police closer together, and also bring police and community closer together. That we saw that during our own tragedy here with Detectives Lou and Ramos. The 2 largest police funerals ever held in the United States were in the city within 2 weeks of each other. 25,000 police officers from all over the country. I think you'll see certainly something equal to that down in Dallas in the week or so ahead. But we also saw phenomenal outpourings of support from the community. In the briefing we had this morning with the mayor, it was discussed that just what's going on in terms of a lot of the community leaders that our borough chiefs had begun to reach out to. We're already reaching out to the borough chiefs, the precinct captains, the community affairs officers, just to express their grief and their condolence. So that's the opportunity we shouldn't lose, to take advantage of the opportunity to bring us together rather than tear us apart. And all credit to police officers who have a right to feel angry, a right to feel in some respects afraid, in a sense, because they're out there visibly in that blue uniform. And last night they were targeted because they were wearing that blue uniform. But they still go out there and do that job. And the vast, vast majority of them do it admirably well. And that's what we would expect. And, but again, these tragedies, out of the tragedy, let's try to find some good that may come out of it.
Commissioner, I'll fast through it very quickly. Do you feel because there was a peaceful protest in which these officers were ambushed, that it may change the perception of how some of the officers will actually approach protests in the future? Or what messages are you sending to them today?
No, I actually don't think that will be the case. That watching, as many of you have been watching the various interviews coming out of Dallas, Dallas celebrates that it has a special relationship, its police department, with its community. It is like we are here in New York. We celebrate that we are a neighborhood police organization. Chief O'Neill and Chief Gomez, certainly, as you're well aware, over these last 2 years, have been really seeking to build new partnerships with the NCO programs and the pilot precinct programs. So no, I don't see this creating an alienation. The relationships are still there that were there before the event. Again, this oftentimes brings people closer together rather than pulling them apart.
Commissioner, I was speaking to a police official from outside the city who said that had this been coming back to ISIS or some other terrorist group, we would have understood or expected this. But coming as this did in a racial charge situation with the protests, were you surprised to see where this is coming back to?
Well, I think all of us were surprised with the horrendous aspect of it. In other words, the targeting of police officers very specifically in that by one individual, and taking as many lives as he did in just such a short period of time. And We've talked oftentimes in this city about the concern about the lone wolf rather than a repeat of a 9/11 type of event. And so much of what we've geared up for here, counterterrorism, intelligence, is to try and identify that lone wolf before the fact. What will be very interested as Dallas goes forward with their investigation with the FBI as to what was known about this individual beforehand. Was his act very similar to the incident that we had with our detectives back in 2014, a spontaneous act rather than something that was planned over time? We'll be very interested in understanding that as we try to understand any of these attacks. But it just drives home that the incredible challenge we have, not only to protect against terrorism, but to protect against this form of crime with so many guns out there and the carnage that one individual was able to carry out in such a short period of time.
Commissioner, as you move forward with community policing, how do you deal with this issue of trust? And is there anything that you can do or you can tweak as a result of this?
No, we have, you've all seen the 5 T's, if you will. You've probably listened to us ad nauseum talk about the trust as the basis, the foundation upon the other 4 T's, the terrorism, the technology, tackling crime. What Chief O'Neill and Chief Gomez have designed that in many respects is modeled after what I did in Boston in the 1970s was this idea of trying to find ways in which we can police and police in a way that we build trust rather than tear it down. And I think we do have a model that over time will in fact do that for us. We have clearly seen that that model of policing in this city has reduced crime by phenomenal amounts. On Monday we'll be talking with you about the 6-month crime stats for the beginning of this year, which are some of the best in the history of the city. Look at the area of use of firearms by this department. I have 36,000 cops. In 2015, they used their firearms a total of 65 times. 36,000 cops in a city of 8.5 million people. And I think 36 of those or something like that were combat situations. So we have effectively worked with communities over the years to build a degree of trust and calm and have made the city a much safer place in the process. But we are working very hard to have much more personal trust. That's what the NCOs are all about. That's what the sector officers are all about, that people see a face. And I'd also point out that it's sometimes lost in the city that well over 50, close to 60% of our officers live in this city. They're of these neighborhoods. They're of these communities. So it's not the idea that we have an occupying army in New York City. Their families are here. Their parents are here. They live here. And that's a big head start for us.
Let me add to that. I really want to urge you to spend time with the NCOs. I've already had the occasion to talk to a number, including as recently as on Monday in Staten Island. And when you ask the officers what it has meant for them to be able to build a deeper relationship with the community, the enthusiasm is unbelievable. I give a lot of credit to Chief O'Neill and Chief Gomez for what they've created. The officers talk consistently, every neighborhood that I've been in, about the respect they have received from neighborhood members, the information they've gotten, the way that people seek them out and offer them leads and tips. And then when you talk to community members, and I remember a few weeks back at Bushwick Houses in Brooklyn, the community members went out of their way to seek me out and tell me how important it was to them to have the relationship with the officer, how much they wanted it, because several officers had been assigned to those houses on an ongoing basis. That hadn't been the reality before. So when you talk to everyday New Yorkers who are now experiencing neighborhood policing, it's such an important change in their lives. It's very personal for everyone involved. I would urge you to go out and listen to some of these stories because it's a very different approach to policing. It's been one that's been hoped for and dreamed of for decades, but this team is the first to actually make it work, and I think it's going to change and build that trust and really give us the platform to build that trust for the long haul in this city.
If I may, building on that for just a moment, I'm just looking to the back of the room and I see Chief Joanne Jaffe, who's very well known to you, heads up our Community Affairs Bureau, and the hundreds of officers that work for her. This summer, for example, they will basically provide opportunities for thousands, tens of thousands of young people to go to camp, to go to programs throughout the summer months that as part of their community partnership. Her Grandmother Loves program, which we've expanded throughout the city. has had great success in terms of building relationships with so many of these grandmothers who are taking care of grandkids because the parents are no longer there to take care of. There's also the initiatives that have been created. One of the things she's doing this morning is reaching out to our 250 clergy council, individually reaching out to every one of them to enlist their support to what are you hearing from the community, what can we do for the community. So while we have created this neighborhood policing initiative, it is on the strong foundation of what was already in existence here and is constantly expanding.
Commissioner, under what circumstances would the NYPD use a bomb to kill the suspect?
We have that capability that we are waiting to determine exactly what they utilized in terms of Dallas. In light of what Dallas was facing, I am fully supportive of that. This is an individual that killed 5 police officers. Why put more officers' lives at risk? So, God bless them.
Can you describe a little bit more about the 17 threats? Is there any kind of origin or commonality that they have other than they're coming shortly after what we've seen in videos that are published?
Well, as I said, after events like this, we usually get an increase of threats to police officers, and they come in many different ways. People overhear somebody talking about wanting to do something, maybe a family member calling. Some of the threats are posted online via Twitter. Some of them are posting on Facebook, urging people to go out and, do something against police officers. Some of them come from other law enforcement agencies that notify them for us. So we get them in multiple ways, and as I said earlier, we'll investigate. Officer safety is very important to us, so we'll investigate every one of them fully. And like I say, right now, we don't deem any of them to be credible at this point.
I'm sorry, I can't hear your question. After Ferguson? I was not supportive of that call, being quite frank with you. There's no doubt that certain agencies misused the equipment they were issued, had equipment they didn't need, but as we've clearly seen, events in America the last several years have indicated we need to equip our officers with the appropriate equipment to deal with the threats they face. We're in the process of actually modernizing all of our emergency service unit equipment. We are buying the latest state-of-the-art equipment, thanks to the mayor and the funding he's providing, so that we'll be replacing literally all of the equipment ESU uses, all the armored trucks, etc. Latest state-of-the-art technology to do the best we can to protect our officers, because as they protect themselves, they're also protecting the public. Case in point, that we had a 1950s era armored personnel carrier that would be utilized to rescue injured officers or civilians in the event of an incident. That was recalled from the NYPD by the federal government. Insanity that in terms of basically it is 60 years old. We have never misused a piece of equipment that we've had. So I think that particular issue needs to be refocused on. I think it was painted with too broad a brush at that particular point in time. There's no denying some departments inappropriately use what they have, but to basically paint with the broad brush, I think, was very inappropriate. I know the expertise of my department, the NYPD, certainly, and I'm very comfortable that we utilize what we have very appropriately.
Last up, Richie.
This is for the mayor and the commissioner. Just wondering, given the charged atmosphere, whether you would advise the protesters to modify their language to make things more gentle, to chill out?
Yeah, as I said before, it's a time for mutual respect. And, anyone who wants to exercise their First Amendment rights, we're here to defend that. But there needs to be just some humanity here, some recognition of our common humanity. We have 5 public servants killed in cold blood. Their families are in tremendous pain. Their communities in tremendous pain. It's being felt all over the country. That needs to be respected. And at the same time as someone feels it's important to go out and speak for the changes we need in this country, and I don't think anyone denies that we need to make some serious changes, and we need to have a much better dialogue in this country that will lead to those changes. But that will only work if there's respect and an effort to de-escalate tensions rather than increase them. So I would say to anyone who's going out to protest, show respect for the officers who are protecting you, and certainly follow their instructions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
You've been listening for more than a half hour to New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, Commissioner Bill Bratton, and Chief of Department James O'Neill speaking in measured tones, reacting to the tragedy in Dallas of 5 officers being shot, ambushed, 7 others wounded. And we heard also what is happening here. The mayor saying at this point there is no credible threat to this city. However, Police Commissioner Bratton saying that they are taking action, stepping up security, additional security outside New York City police precincts, and also officers, you'll see them in pairs. There will be no solo patrolling. And Mayor de Blasio also saying when you see those officers to offer condolences, to console them, and to thank them. Also, there were comments about protests. We know one that was last night. There were some arrests, and with the First Amendment right to be able to protest, Police Commissioner Bratton talking about the limits to obey the police. They know that you're there to protest, but they are setting the limits for the protesting as far as direction, where the protests go, to allow the protest to happen peacefully. Chief James O'Neill, Chief of Department, 36,000 New York City officers, and you could hear the sadness in his voice when he was talking about neighborhood policing and the effort in New York City. He said, we've come a long way and we don't want to lose that they're building trust and respect and community policing, as well as the police departments are working on that to strengthen the relationships between the people and the NYPD. Commissioner Bratton also saying the reality and sadness of what happened in Dallas could happen in any city. He said we cannot tolerate racial injustice. We cannot tolerate injustice against our department. So a lot of this, of course, not only here in the city, but going back to what happened on Monday in Louisiana and then Wednesday in Minnesota, and the reactions again all over this country. And last night, of course, the ambush shooting and the man who police say did that, an African-American man in Dallas, and the officers were, as far as we know, of white. Also, Commissioner Bratton saying this is a clarion call for the grievances to be heard from everyone between the black community and to understand better what police officers are going through. Again, we just heard from Police Commissioner Bratton, Mayor de Blasio saying there is no credible threat in New York City. I'm Dana Tyler in our CBS 2 newsroom. We'll have more at 5 and 6, and Scott Pelley reporting live at 6:30 in Dallas. Thanks for joining us. Back to your regular programming right.
From CBS 2 and WLNY, this has been Breaking News.